Hey. Okay. Hey guys. Okay, so I'm doing County Cullen. Sorry I'm not there to do it in person, but I figured the video is kind of just as good. You guys can laugh at me. It's okay. Okay, fine. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna read you guys the background to who County Cullen is, and then we'll be able to understand the poem a bit better because it's very short. So I tried to make as much analysis as I could. Okay, so County Cullen, born in New York City in 1903. He was religious. It was like a variation of Christian, I guess. I didn't really know what to call it. It's called he was a parsonage, and the religion is based off of a certain type of house. So you can do your research on it. It's called Methodist parsonage. Anyways, he went to college in New York at DeWitt Clinton University, and it also says that he began to write poetry at age 14, so I mean, he was a writer all of his life. His poetry, after later attending New York University for his graduate school, was published in over 10 magazines, and not like small little blogs. It was like big magazines at the time, and they still are pretty big magazines, some of them. He completed his degree at Harvard University, mostly white populated, just thought I should add that in which he published his first volume of poetry called Color. Which, like all of his work, was not written in the ways of modernists. He didn't conform to this weird new way of writing. He stuck to his roots, and I guess people loved his writing. His next volume was called Copper Sun. In the second volume, Copper Sun, there was a lot of controversy because people were upset that he didn't bring enough attention to the subject of race in this volume as he did in the first volume. He does have a poem called The Ballad of the Brown Girl. So this suggests that the majority of his successes came from the desire to demand equality for his race. I guess the African American race depended on him to kind of send off political views and justices through his poem, and so when he wasn't doing that, they thought, oh, like, why isn't he doing that anymore? I guess they got upset because who's going to stick up for them now within the creative world? He did grow up African American, obviously. He had his black skin. He was in New York City and going to like New York University and Harvard University, not really populated with blacks at the time. So all of his poems are regarding his own experiences, and unlike poet Hughes, he is talking about his own experiences and cannot speak on behalf of anyone else's because he doesn't really know. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read you the poem, a bunch of notes on it, and then we'll go through and analyze together. Okay, so it's called Incident by County Cullen, and in parentheses it's for Eric Walren, so I guess we'll discuss what we think it is later, or who Eric is. Okay, so once riding in Baltimore, head filled with glee, I saw a Baltimorean. Keep looking straight at me. Now I was 8 and very small, and he was no whit bigger. And so I smiled, but he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore, from May until December. Of all the things that happened there, that is all that I remember. So, analysis of the poem. I wanted to start with the analysis regarding the line heart filled and a head filled with glee. So, I guess you could say that there was repetition in the word filled and head filled with glee, and it also suggests that he was very happy and he wanted to point that he was writing in Baltimore, very chill. He had a good mentality, and he was just taking a trip and whatever. And he saw some Baltimorean. I guess that was around where he was passing, and he figured that everything was good, whatever. And it says keep looking. Keep looking straight at me. So he was staring him down, I guess. And then it goes about to say, now I was 8 and very small, and he was no whit bigger. So there's two things that you can say about this. So it says that he was 8 and he was very small. So he was young and I guess naive, which kind of makes you wonder why is he traveling through Baltimore, but regardless, he was 8 and very small. So he goes about to describe his characteristics because in the next line he says, and he was no whit bigger. And that's describing the Baltimorean, showing that he was no more superior, he was not bigger at all. there was no difference, I guess, other than the color of their skin. So further, we can say that, well, when you go into the next line, it says, and so I smiled, but he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. So this little kid, I guess, you assume that it's a white little kid, called him nigger. And when you go back and you see that he was no whit bigger, at first you think it's no whit bigger describing the height, but wit also means like witty, brain. So we come to realize that he's no smarter, no greater than he is just because of the color of his skin. So I think that there was specific reason why he used that word. It shows also like maybe he was trying to show that he was way more mature than this white little kid was, saying that he poked his tongue out and he called me nigger. And so the word nigger is in quotations because I guess that he's really trying to point out that it's such a ridiculous word. It's not like when you're using words legitimately, you don't necessarily quote them. I think there's two reasons why he quoted them. He quoted them once, one to show that that was exactly the words that the little kid used, and also to show that that word is just like, oh, it's just a word. It's not a real description of who he is. So then it goes to say, it was more of an overview for the next couple lines. It says, I saw the whole of Baltimore, and from May until December, of all the things that happened there, that is all that I remembered. So he's saying that I saw everything there. He saw the whole of Baltimore, and it seemed to him that, I guess I analyzed it, that racism was all it comprised of. He was such a little boy and he saw everything, but the only thing that he could quite remember was that one bad experience that he had, that one thing that really stuck with him. So I wanted to go back to the quote, and he stuck his tongue out. So I mentioned that it was a childish action, and also it said that he described that he was 8 and this other child looked exactly the same size, but even more so, I think that it shows that this description of the kid wasn't really of the kid, but on a deeper level, it was regarding the whole society and the youth, and how it shows how contaminated the youth's mind was and the youth's moral was. That this little kid would walk up to this other little kid and call him, like, you nigger. Like, that's not acceptable today, and clearly it was then. Okay, so then I wanted to focus on this. It says from May until December, and that's really to focus on the fact that it was a really long-lasting time that he was in Baltimore. Then he goes and says, of all the things that happened there, that's all I remember. So from May until December, we all know in our lives, May until December, a lot of things happen, many events, and you don't even remember the ones from December because we're already so late in the year and we're only in March. But he said from all those things that have happened, and I've been traveling and this and that, I can only remember that one thing. So not only does it show that that really had an impact on his life and on his emotions, but also it really ruined his trip, and it was the one thing that stuck with him. That whole now for him, all of Baltimore is filled with the idea that all little kids there are gonna call him nigger. And so he has a really bad impression on that, and it ruined his trip, and it shows that really words can hurt. So I wanted to go back to the title, and it says by County Cullen, and it says for Eric Walrond. So in my opinion, Eric Walrond, this is kind of like an ode, but with a negative connotation. It's an ode to this little kid who called him a nigger. It was describing, like as an overview, it described his trip, and then it described that he was there for so long, and it was the only thing that he could remember, showing that it really lasted. It was a really big, lasting impression. So this is kind of for Eric to show him, what you did was really messed up, and words can hurt, and you hurt me. I don't think this was made under the impression that Eric would see, obviously not, but it was kind of to show that it was on behalf of the, I guess, African American community, and also to teach other people a lesson who don't have that moral compass, to show that words do hurt, and not only for the African American community, but with a bigger picture to everyone. So now back to the title. In bold it says incident. So I think it's ironic that he refers to it as an incident because it sounds rather casual, like, oh, just the incident that happened the other day, when in reality he said that this was all that I could remember. So it was clearly more than just an incident, and so calling it an incident suggests that it may have happened more than once or even twice, and that it was just another thing that happened. Um, Also, incident usually kind of use incident like, oh, that incident that happened on La Cienega the other day when there was a car crash or whatever. It also has a lot of negative connotation. It wasn't just like, it just shows that it really, this thing had a really big impact on his life and also possibly affected his writing. And we see that in his background. He wrote a lot about um, he wrote a lot about like he wrote The Copper Sun and the girl about the brown poem thing. It's awkward. Yeah, so he wrote a lot about that. So it showed this. He wrote this when, if this is true, which I assume it is. It says, "Now I was Aiden very small." He began writing poetry when he was 14. So I mean, we come to think that maybe this poem, I mean, this incident had an effect on his writing, and maybe this Eric Walrond is the reason that he is writing poetry about racism and his experiences.